Figure 7.2 InitArray.java. In this simple command line application, we're going to demonstrate to you how to declare a one-dimensional array, how to create a one-dimensional array object, and then how to iterate through a one-dimensional array using indexing. So we start out here at line 8 in our main method, where we've declared a one-dimensional array, which happens to be called array. The way that we indicate the number of dimensions in Java is by sets of square brackets. So a little bit later in this lesson you'll see how to define a two-dimensional array, and you'll see that we have two separate sets of square brackets next to one another. Now here we're saying that we have the integer array, which is one-dimensional. You can also put the square brackets after the type name, and this is where Java and C/C++ differ a little bit. Here, this is saying that the type of every variable declared in this declaration is integer one-dimensional array. So if I were to go add another variable here, let's call it array2 for example, both array and array2 are considered to be one-dimensional integer array variables based on this declaration. On the other hand, if I move the square brackets back to where they were originally, now what we're saying is that array is a one-dimensional array of integers, and array2 is just an integer. So the placement of the square brackets has a very different meaning depending on how you declare your variables. It is our suggestion that you never declare more than one variable in any one declaration, and that way you don't have to worry about the placement of the square brackets affecting how your variables are actually being declared. Now there's another thing you should notice about line 8, which is that we're not specifying in the square brackets how many elements are going to be stored in this array. And that's because in Java, arrays are actually objects, and all objects need to be dynamically allocated. So it's actually not part of Java's syntax to allow you to place a number in between these square brackets to specify how many elements there are. In fact, if you do that and compile your code, you will get a compiler error. Now, down here at line 10 is where we go and create the actual array object. For all objects that we allocate, we use the new operator to create the objects. In this case, we're allocating something of type int, and the fact that we follow it with a set of square brackets indicates that we're allocating an integer array, in this case with 10 elements in it. The reference to this object is what gets stored in the variable array. So some of you may be familiar with the concept of pointers in C and C++, and you may know that the name of an array in those languages is basically a pointer to the first element of the array. Well, in a way, the name of an array here in Java is really a pointer to the object that represents the array. It holds the reference to that object, and we simply use the name that we've defined for the array as a way to access the elements of that object, which we'll do down below. Another two things actually that are special about arrays in Java as opposed to some other languages is that arrays in Java know their own length from the moment you create them. So because I've specified that the length of this array is 10, the array has a length instance variable which is going to hold the value 10 from this point forward in this example. Arrays are not resizable, so you know that it's always going to be an array of 10 elements long. If you wanted to quote-unquote resize an array, you'd have to allocate a new array and assign it to the array variable. The other thing that's different about arrays in Java as opposed to some other languages is that when you create an array, every element of the array gets its default initializer value. So because we have 10 integers in this array, every element will be set to 0 implicitly by the operation on line 10. Now at line 12 here, we've gone ahead and output a couple of column heads where we're going to output for each array element its index number in the array and the value of the element in the array. And the index numbers in Java start at element number 0. So if you have 10 elements, your indices are from 0 through 9. And down here at lines 15 and 16, we have a little for loop that's going to walk through the array elements, and one at a time will output the elements. So we start with our little counter control variable here set to 0. As long as the counter is less than, and here's the interesting piece, array.length, which is always the number of elements in the array. As long as it's less than that number, we're going to print out two values. In the first field of %5d, we're going to output the value counter in a field width of 5 right justified. And in the second field, %8d, we're going to output the value of array subcounter, and notice the use of the square brackets to access the value at a particular index of the array. So we'll iterate in this case through the counter values 0 through 9. Once the counter becomes 10, it will no longer be less than the array's length, and therefore the loop will terminate. Now we've already gone and executed this one down here. You can see that we've got two columns of output, and you can see the index numbers from 0 to 9, and the values are all set to 0 implicitly by Java's new operator.
Looking to advance your career by acquiring new skills? Tired of expensive off-site training programs? Wish you could learn from the best instructors in the industry? Look no further than live lessons. Self-paced, personal video instruction by the world's leading technology publishers. Each live lesson comes with a DVD featuring 3 to 4 hours of instructor-led classroom training, sample program code that allows you to work along with your personal instructor, and an example-rich study guide. Live lessons allow you to watch the entire course from start to finish, or navigate directly to any of the individual lessons. You'll literally watch over the shoulder of your instructor as he shows you how to build state-of-the-art applications. Live lessons, the power of the world's leading technology experts at your fingertips. To learn more, visit mylivelessons.com today.